All right, good afternoon. How are you? How the hell are you? How's everybody out there? Friday afternoon. So you want to get your first motorcycle. You want a Harley Davidson, and you're not sure what bike you should get because you hear people say stuff like that there's a, well, you hear people alluding to their version of reality or their opinion that there is a perfect beginner's motorcycle or starter motorcycle. I'm not of that opinion necessarily. I think it depends more on the person. There's a lot more goes into it. Let me explain something. I've been riding for 40 years, for real, 40 whole years, not 38, 39, 40 years. First motorcycle I started out on British bikes. I had a Triumph, started out on British bikes. That's what I wanted. I used to love Triumphs. And the second motorcycle I got, no, that motorcycle went through a few renditions. So it looked like a couple different bikes, but that's just because it was also the first motorcycle that I built from scratch after I tore it completely down to the frame and hot tanked the frame back then and all that shit. That's how we did it. I did it and built the whole bike, made it into exactly what I wanted to. So that was my first bike. And then I got a Harley Davidson. I got a 1948 Panhead. A very iconic motorcycle. And that's when I discovered what made Harley Davidson so great. Anyway, so my first motorcycle that I learned on long, long ago was a rigid frame, hardtail chopper. It was stretched and it was raked and had an 18-inch over stock length front end. 18 over front end. Stretched rigid frame. That was my first motorcycle. It didn't even have a foot shifter. Shifting's on the right side. On these old Triumphs, it was a 650. So it had a straight jockey shifter with an 8-ball on top of it. That's what it was on there when I got it, and that's what stayed on there. So, but it was easier than, later, like my Panhead had a real foot clutch and jockey shifter, But that first bike, that Triumph, was a jockey shifter, but we went with my right hand, so I still had a hand clutch on the left side. Anyway, point is, my first motorcycle was a chopper, a real chopper, not these bullshit things you see everybody build in these TV shows and they think are choppers. It was a real old school, real life chopper. That was my first bike, and I learned to ride on that son of a gun. Granted, it was only a 650, so it wasn't really overpowered. It went really good because I didn't weigh jack shit. I was a small guy then, I don't even think I was the same height, which is another odd thing. I actually continued to grow taller until I was well into my 20s, way into my 20s before I actually reached the height that I was going to get to for whatever reason. I was a late bloomer, I guess, but I was very skinny, so I didn't weigh very much. I didn't weigh much at all. So that was my first motorcycle. And the way that I learned to ride it, there weren't any YouTube videos. There weren't really, to my knowledge, I never heard of any. There weren't any classes you could go to. There weren't any, anything like that you could learn to ride. So you just got on it and you rode it. That's how we learned to ride back in the day. You got on and you rode. You got on and you rode, man. If you wanted it bad enough, you're going to do. That's what you're going to do. You're going to figure it out. You will figure it out. Like everything else, we had to figure things out back then. Wasn't anybody there, necessarily. Not like today. Not like all these bastions of wisdom and knowledge all over YouTube, making videos and telling you what you should do and shouldn't do and can wear and can't wear and all this other nonsense, right? And some of it's really good. Some of it's some outstanding riding tips on those types of videos. Outstanding riding tips. Very good. Very good stuff out there. So you might want to look at that too. Refer to some of that stuff because some of that is really, really good. Really good. Especially any of these channels that are brought to you by someone that used to be is either a retired cop or is still a cop in the motorcycle pool. because those guys can ride their balls off. There's no two ways about that. They can ride their asses off. I've known quite a few of those guys over the years, even to this day now. And those dudes all can ride their balls off, man. They really can. They really can. They will run circles around, untrained people that even have been riding a long time. They can ride their asses off, man. They literally really can. Anyway, so I just got on my bike and learned to ride. And I got the bike, and that was the hard part because I wanted it so bad. I wanted a chopper so bad. I wanted a chopper so bad, you know. But I always identified with a lot of British kind of shit, old British cars. I had, the old British cars. I worked for Jaguar back in the day, and that was the first dealership I ever worked at, back when they were British made, hand assembled, all that jazz. So, it's just, for me, that's what I wanted. I wanted a Triumph, and that's what I just stumbled onto and I found. Probably paid too much for it. I traded a really, really nice car for it, but the guy was, money was tight for him and his family. He was a young guy with a young family, and they didn't even have a car. All he had was his motorcycle. So I know it killed him to get rid of the motorcycle, but I guess it was the time for him to do that. He was ready, and he was happy and grateful to have a car that he could drive his family around in. Me, I was the opposite. All I wanted was the motorcycle. So I got that bike, and I looked at it, and I said, you know what? I got it. I'm damn sure going to ride it. And that's how I learned to ride it. I just got on and started riding. And yeah, I didn't know anything, but and there was some fear to it, but worked out great. In no time at all, I was riding the shit out of that motorcycle. I was even pulling wheelies on that motorcycle later, But today, so there's two camps, and I'm kind of halfway in both of them. I got a foot in each side. On the one hand, I would say, get the fucking motorcycle you want. Get the bike that you want, so you don't get something and you actually get to the point where it's not holding up its end as far as what you expect out of it, because you've already conquered it, and you really want more. So I would say, get the bike that you want, especially if money's tight for you. If you got plenty of money, then it's not an issue. This advice is not for you. But back in the day, today I have several bikes. I have quite a few bikes. I have probably one example of almost every style or type of platform, frame, chassis-based motorcycle Harley Davidson currently makes. I probably have one of each out in the garage right now. So, and several of them are mine, including a custom Paul Yaffe frame chopper with a fat tire and shit, but it's not like those cookie cutter stamped out shit. It's really nice. Anyway, it wasn't like that back in the day. Back in the day, you could barely scrape, save, trade, barter, whatever to get your first bike. So I got that Triumph, and I didn't have money just to throw into it. You found money, you worked hard, you put what you could into it, more than what you probably could afford. You still kept putting it into it, because that was another thing. Make it yours, make it, individualize it, express yourself. But it wasn't like I had several bikes to choose from. Usually you had one motorcycle. For the longest time, I would have one motorcycle, and it wasn't like now these bikes are flawless. They've got everything. I have to look for things to do to them. You know what I mean? They're that meticulously maintained and that new-like, and there's not even dirt on them. And I ride the shit out of them, but if you stay on top of the polishing and the cleaning and all that, it's easy to keep up with it once you're in that shape, Once they're like that and everything's brand new and shiny, it's easy to keep it that way. It's not bad. Realistically, you're going to get nicks and scratches, and pebbles are going to hit the bike and shit like that, but that's part of riding it. You're going to ride it, It's not meant just to be looked at. But if you have plenty of money that you can go ahead and get an entry level, what you call an entry level motorcycle, right? And then it doesn't matter to you if that's not really what you want, because you have more money and you'll just get on another motorcycle, or you'll trade it back in or whatever. Maybe you're buying a new motorcycle. I would never buy a new motorcycle, ever. I've never done it, and I never would. Most, maybe not all, but most technicians that work on, turn wrenches day in and day out, they tend to not be brand new vehicle buyers. I like to wait and see how something's going to do for a while before I go and I can't see it. I'm not going to come off that kind of money. To a guy like me, these bikes, I don't pay for them what, the average Joe's going to think he needs to pay. Because I know what they are, exactly I know what they are. And the other thing is I can do anything I need to do to it, literally. So, and a lot of things to it that I probably shouldn't do to it, if I just feel like it. So I can get them, I know what I'm looking at. I can always find a deal, et cetera, et cetera. But so if you got money and you can go buy a brand new motorcycle, go ahead, or whatever bike. But understand this, contrary to what people like to believe, what it makes them feel good to believe, you're not gonna have that resale value that you think you are. It's going to be extremely difficult to make money off of a motorcycle unless that's what you do. Unless that's like something you've made almost into an occupation or a side job, that you buy and sell motorcycles, so you're educated on it, you know what to do about it. And you might be able to buy one and flip it very quickly or whatever. Two are the average norms. You're not going to flip it to a guy like me unless you got such a good deal on it that it's still an awesome good deal, even for me. Turning wrenches 40 years for me to look at it and say, oh, that's a great deal, and I'll buy it. You know what I mean? That's rare, but it can happen. So for the most part, a lot of people, the average people today, buy a Harley Davidson, and then when they put it up for sale, they think they're going to get a whole ton of money for it, even though they put 28,000, 30,000 miles on it. And that's not the truth. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's going to depreciate radically because there's too many out there. Market's flooded. Is 28,000, 30,000 miles a lot of miles? No, there are people put 100,000 miles on. But is a lot of miles on the engine? Depends how you look at it. It's got two cylinders. It's got two cylinders, right? So if you got 50,000 miles on your motorcycle, two cylinders, what would that be comparable to if that were a little V8 engine, pulling around a much heavier vehicle? 200,000 miles maybe? So think of it in those terms. You got two cylinders that are doing all this work. They're doing all this work. So it's not exactly the same, but to me, a motorcycle with that kind of miles on it, I'm looking at close to rebuild time. If I see a bike for sale, it's got 30-some thousand miles on it, I'll probably be able to ride it some if it's been well taken care of, well maintained, but you don't know. If it's been ridden hard and put up wet, it's heading near rebuild time if I intend to keep it a while. I'm going to go through it and make it reliable. And there's no way for me to know that until I take it apart. Until I take it apart. People can disagree all they want. I know there are people out there going to say, oh, I got 40,000 miles on my bike and it runs like a clock. Well, have you kept up work? Have you had mechanical work done? Have you had a top end done? Have you had, if it's a twin cam, have you had, if it's an early twin cam, have you had the tensioners replaced? Have you done any of this kind of stuff? Me, I want to be able to get on my bikes, and every one of them out there I can ride anywhere I want to go without a minute's notice, really, when they're up and together and good to go and charged and all that shit, right? And not have any worries. Not have any worries. That's the condition I like them in. So if I'm putting, if I get 20 or 30,000 miles on one, I'm looking at taking it down and doing some things that winter internally. So that's me. If you disagree and you're different, then more power to you. Live your life and I'll live mine. But I'm never on the side of the road. I'm never on the side of the road. It's never been like that. So if you don't have a bunch of money, then I think you should get the bike you want. That's on the one hand. I think get the bike you want and learn to ride it. If you really want it, learn to ride it. But you're going to have to learn. Like I said, there's enough information out there now. You can go onto YouTube, you can find somebody credible that's giving you instructional videos, and they've got all kind of things on there where they set cones up and they're practicing figure eights and they're showing you how to turn with your handlebars in lock position, and they're teaching you all this beginner basic stuff. And let me tell you something, I don't know how many guys are out there, probably half easily, and that's a modest estimate. Probably half of all the men out there right now riding Harley Davidsons could benefit from these kind of tips, because I see them. I see how they ride. They can't ride for shit. They really can't. I see it all the time. Now, they think they can, but they really can't. You know, 40 years, I've never really been down. The only time I've ever been down is when it's pouring down rain outside, roads are wet in my youth, and I had an FXR with a two-stage fogger system on it, nitrous on it, and it was super, super fast. It was very well known, and I would burn through probably 3 back tires a season on that motorcycle. Now there are no seasons. I ride year round. You know, back when I started, I rode year round. I would even try to ride in the snow. I would even try. You know, I have tried before. I wouldn't try that today, but today, you know, and I'm getting older and I don't like the cold so much. So unless I really have to ride, which I will, I try not to go out if it's below 40 degrees. But I will go out and ride sometimes in the 20s if I really am itching to ride that badly. Of course, I'll freeze my balls off, but I have done it lately. I did it this year. Well, 2022. So if money's, you know, so that's the one thing. Get the bike you want. Now also you got to look at yourself. How tall are you? You know, sit down in the seat of a motorcycle that you're prospectively considering, and see where your center of gravity is going to be on that motorcycle in comparison to you. Where just like you have, you know, your friction zone in your clutch, well, there's a zone where the ergonomics of that motorcycle in relation to how you're mechanically built, you know, your height, your weight, your, you know, length of your legs, every other damn thing, right? Is that bike set up for you? Is that bike going to be appropriate for you? My opinion is, and you know, a lot of guys are going to disagree with this too. My opinion is, especially if it's a heavier bike and you need the advantage of leverage over the motorcycle, because you're going to walk it around sometimes. You're going to be backing it out of places. You're going to be on gravel backing it or moving it, or, you know, I like to have the lowest center of gravity possible. I like to be low. My chopper is as low as I'm sitting in this chair. My chopper is the lowest one. Now, my other bikes are not as low, but I still absolutely 100% want to be flat-footed on the ground and still have my knees bent. I don't want to be jacked up all kind of high, not on something that's heavy. Not on something that's heavy. You know, these aren't dirt bikes, okay? Not on something that's heavy. Yeah, so that's another thing to consider. You know, and the main thing is whatever bike you get, you have to learn to ride it. You know, take a course and really, really put yourself into it and practice outside of the lessons. Or look on YouTube at some of these videos that are from reputable people. Like I said, there's a guy on there, I forget the poor guy's name. You know, hope he forgives me. He'll never see this probably, but he's an outstanding instructor. I think he's retired. He still instructs, but he was an instructor for the motorcycle division, the motor pool, you know, law enforcement, and he's an incredible rider. He's a great instructor too, very good, very comprehensive his videos are. So literally go out to these big ass parking lots when they're empty on Sundays or whatever, and practice. Practice. You can't practice too much. You will always default to your training. In anything in this world, you're going to default to your training. You will default to your training. Always. Always. If you don't believe that, look at some of these videos that capture crimes in progress and things like this and how people respond. You know, when you've got some kind of maniac and he's misbehaving or he's doing some terrible, terrible shit, or maybe he's got a knife, he's just, you know, carrying on and going around, you know, how people react. You're going to default to your programming. You're going to default to your training. So it's the same thing as on a motorcycle. You get in a gym, you get in a bad place, you're going to default to your training. Whatever comes second nature to you. So that's how much you have to train. So where it becomes second nature. So rather than go out and develop bad habits and that becomes second nature, you know, you want to go out and learn correctly and practice good habits and turn them into reflexes. That's critical. That's critical. Now, the other side of the pendulum, and like I said, I got a foot in both camps. The other side is that you want to get an entry-level motorcycle. Now, if you're physically not as strong, I'm not putting you down, but if you're physically not as strong, if you're challenged vertically, now you can always take that bike and you can lower that bike and you can do all kinds of things to it, right? But you don't want to be disappointed getting a motorcycle, putting a ton of money into it if it's going to end up being more than you expected anyway, and you're going to become discouraged. You know, in my opinion, it's like buying a really shitty, cheap guitar. get a really shitty, cheap guitar and you want to learn to play guitar, it just makes it more difficult, in my opinion. If the action's horrible and the strings are really high, and it just makes it more difficult. Whereas if you have a better, something that's just set up properly and easier to play, you're not going to become as easily discouraged. That's what I feel. And I think it's a similar thing with anything in life, and it's like that with motorcycles. So that's why, at the same time, I would say, if you have your doubts like that, if you're really scared of it, but you want to do it, then maybe you should get an entry-level motorcycle. And you know what? That entry-level motorcycle may not only be an entry-level motorcycle, it may be the motorcycle that's right for you. You may fall in love with it. Listen, I have, I don't know how many twin cams out there right now, but I have a Road King twin cam. There is but it's customized. It's got the big front wheel. It's not really so much a Road King anymore. I have, there is a Heritage Softail out there, so those are different size tires, and they're wider, and you have more sidewall as compared to my other Softail, my Softail, which is Softail Custom. But that one's not twin cam, it was an Evo, but it has 21-inch front wheel, so less sidewall, lower profile tire, bigger diameter, et cetera, rides completely different, it's narrower. And I have my twin cam Paul Yaffe chopper out there, which is pretty radical. And it's not as hard to ride as you would think because I got super low center of gravity. The other thing that I go for is I like my handlebars. I want every advantage. So I like my handlebars to be in a line that I'm almost bench pressing, so I can get behind it. And I have all the leverage over that bad boy. I have all the leverage. Yes, finesse is nice. You're going to learn finesse. That's great. But when it comes down to it, I still do not want that motorcycle to be more than I can handle. And it's going to be a hell of a motorcycle to be more than I can handle now. But there are things that I do to every motorcycle I own that I just find makes it more fitting to me. Okay, if you look at my Softail Custom, it looks like I got ape hangers on there. People say, how can you ride with those things? Well, they're high enough that they're like shoulder height or just a little bit more than that. So it's just like I'm bench pressing. As long as I can get my chest behind it, my shoulders behind it, I'm a pretty strong guy. I've got every advantage. And also, in a lot of ways, as those handlebars extend up further from, the center of gravity, the low center of gravity, I have more control. The bike's been lowered. I got trick shocks and stuff underneath of there. Bike's as low as I can get it, and it's super stiff. That's why it's so low. So that's maybe a negative thing, but it's just how I like it. I like ridges. I'm okay with them. So I got it slammed down pretty low. So I got every advantage off it. I can muscle that bike if I get into a situation, and that's going to be mostly if I'm walking around, backing it up, I'm on gravel and moving it, backing up into a parking space with a passenger on the back, all that shit. And it's the same thing with like my chopper. My chopper, the bars aren't as high, but they still end up, because of the low center of gravity, that's still like right in a bench press position. So I have all the advantage. I have all the leverage over the motorcycle. That's me. Everybody's different, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're supposed to be different, right? They keep telling you diversity is a good thing. Well, I think that diversity and freedom of expression and your own personal artistic take on your motorcycle, I think that's the way to go too. So if you're going to get you an entry-level bike and you okay, a Sportster, for example. Now, I have a Sportster out there. I never had a Sportster before. I never owned a Sportster before. You hear good and bad about them. People are either crazy about them and they love Sportsters, or they can't stand Sportsters. It's a girl's bike. It's a starter bike. It's not a real man's bike, right? Well, this Sportster earned my respect. It's simple as that. It's simple as that. I never thought I would get a Sportster because, to be frank, even after all these years, I looked at that as that would be a step down. I've always ridden big twins. That would be a step down. And I've ridden strokers and all kind of, big engines, big inch engines too. So, but when I got this one, I couldn't resist it. It was an excellent deal, immaculate condition, really taken very well care of. Very tasteful upgrades, all Screaming Eagle stuff, all Harley Davidson stuff on it. And it was a good price. I'm not saying that it was a great price. It was the price it was worth for me. Now, that's a lot less than what the person that owned it could have gotten for it, and I told that you could probably get, a few hundred more than I'm going to pay you for it. But I do this, and to me, that's what it's worth. I'm not going to bullshit you. That's what it's worth to me. I think that's a fair deal. Fair for me, fair for you. But if you hold on to it, to be honest, somebody else will probably come along that would give you more. Because people don't know any better, and largely they will overpay. But anyway, I got the bike, and once I rode it some, I fell in love with it. So I hear a lot of bad things about Sportsters, that they're not made for two-up riding. I think the Sportster is incredible for two-up riding. I prefer to ride it alone, but I think it's incredible for two-up riding. What else do you hear about them? That they're not good for long trips? I'm going to say that it's not an outstanding motorcycle on the highway, just because of the way it's geared, and it's very spunky. Don't get me wrong now. And I've told this to friends of mine that are like, why are you keeping that Sportster all this time? You got all these other bikes, And I tell them, without hesitation, you know what? Let me get on that Sportster. You get on your big bike. Let's go through some of these twisties down here. You ain't going to keep up with me. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that, and I'll put that challenge out there to anybody. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. That little bike it loves twisties and turns, and it's just nice and stubby, and it handles really well. And again, even though the stock handlebars are on it, it's almost like a decline bench press, because I'm leaning over a little bit, so I still have all the leverage advantage, and I have all the power behind it if I would need that. And there are situations where that is going to be an advantage. That's not how you ride a motorcycle, but there are situations, I mean, you want to learn how to ride properly. You want to learn about counter steering. How many people have been riding bikes forever and ever don't even know how to counter steer, don't even do it? That's absolutely insane. How many people don't even know how to lead with their eyes? It's even what you do when you drive a car, to an extent, but on a motorcycle, you really have to do that. You have to look where you want to go, not where you're, immediately at. You have to look where you're going, where you want to go. The faster you're going, the further out you have to look. The slower you're going, the further in you can get away with looking. If I'm turning with the steering wheel locked and I'm turning very slowly in a parking lot or whatever, or I'm making a U-turn like that, I'm going to be looking at where I want to go, but I can get away with looking closer than if I'm at speed. The faster I go, the further out I have to look at where I'm headed. In fact, if I have, handlebars turned to stop and turning, hell, I'm almost looking behind me. I mean, almost. I'm looking where I'm going. But you could get away with looking a little closer the slower you go. That's my opinion. So the Sportster, it's at 70 miles an hour. It's a little buzz machine. It's buzzing. The bike really doesn't like it. It will do it, not a problem. But it really doesn't care for that. It's not its strong suit. It's a very much a lighter motorcycle. I have ridden it on the highway many times already, because I used to work in Baltimore, and I've ridden this Sportster back and forth to work quite a few times. Where I could have chosen to ride a bigger bike, I've ridden the Sportster, because the Sportster I can stick it into tight places quick and get out of tight places quick. With it. So it's really good for that downtown and around all this, what I consider to be heavy traffic, which I don't want to ride in anyway. I think the Sportster gives me an advantage that some of my bigger bikes are not going to give me, especially my chopper, Now on the highway, the chopper's the king, man. There's no shit about that. That big tire chopper loves the highway, man, and it's got long legs. So, everything, the Sportster is going to be better suited for back roads and things like that, because it does great with that stuff. And speeds, you can get on the highway, but it's not like you want to ride all day on the highway on it. I'm gonna admit that. And it's not great for two-up riding, but it's absolutely 100% doable and enjoyable. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, whichever way you go, it's your decision to make. If you get the smaller bike, like I said, that because you think that's an entry-level bike, that bike could actually, pleasantly surprise you, and that might be your bike. It might not simply be an entry-level bike. You might get on that bike and say, man, I love this bike. There are people that are fanatic over Sportsters. People have been riding a long, long, long time, but that's what they like, Sportsters. So, and the other camp that is always bemoaning that Sportsters are not a man's bike and Sportsters are less than and all that, I would say they don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. I totally disagree with that. It's a different bike. It's different. It's better at different things. It's better at different things. Simple as that, you know. So that's about all there is to say about it. I don't know if that helps you make any decision, but you really want to choose, you know, you can go either way. I don't think there's a wrong way to go. I don't think there's a wrong way to go. Unless, like I said, you're more of a petite person. You don't have the physical strength necessarily, or you realize you don't have, you know, it's not one of your strong suits. You don't have the height maybe, or leg length, then you may want to, you know, and some of the Sportsters, you know, that one's just called a Sportster low. And you can adjust the shocks down and really slam it. It's good for shorter people. You can turn them up and it's fine too for me. But, you know, I don't really think there's a wrong way to go. You know, you could make the wrong decision, but it's on an individual basis. Like I said, I learned on an 18 over Springer, you know, rigid frame. And I was riding a big FL pan when I was, you know, still in my early 20s. That was my first Harley. And that was, to me then, that was a heavy bike. So they're different animals, man. They're different animals. My Softail Custom, the way it's set up and everything, it's great for zipping around. It actually handles pretty good. It doesn't handle like a Sportster, but it handles pretty damn good. It's pretty fast. It's got a little bit of longer legs to it. It can, you know, get you down the highway. But again, even that bike, it's not the most enjoyable highway ride. It's a great bike for two-up riding, I think it is. It's the way I got it set up too. Don't forget, you can individualize your bike. But if you get on a bike and you sit on a bike and you say, this bike's not for me, but you just like the idea of it, you know, be realistic. Don't kid yourself that, you know, I'm going to have to put tons of money into this bike to get it to where I feel comfortable riding it. You know, yeah, you're gonna get better. You're gonna make it more comfortable as you own it, if that's your decision. You know, most people do that. You're gonna change things ergonomically, make it yours. But you know, in the end, and I guess you're probably rushing me to get there by now. It's taking so long. Maybe I'll edit this some. But there's a lot to say on the topic. I don't think there's a hard, fast, definite, absolute about what's right. You know, it's just what's right for who. What's right for who. But I will say, if you gotta go one way or the other, you know, and you don't know, I would go for whatever you have the best leverage advantage over, whatever you feel like you can maneuver around on, because you're going to have to walk it around. You're going to be going slow on it. You're going to be just because you can get on it and go straight. That doesn't. A lot of guys can get on them and go straight. A lot of people can do that. It's not hard. That's not hard. The bikes are nicely balanced. If it's in good condition, you know, you can put a damn monkey on that bike, a little monkey, and he can probably ride it straight, even a big heavy bike. But you're going to be on back roads. You're going to be moving through neighborhoods and parking lots and going slowly. And there's a tipping point, you know what I mean? And you got to have the confidence to learn how to lean your bike. You're going to have to learn to lean your bike, man. So you kind of have an idea where that tipping point is. So you don't want to be scared of it. You know, you want to respect it, but you don't want to fear it. So I don't know if this helps you any, but hopefully it does. That's it. I'm getting out of here. You guys take care and have yourselves the start of an awesome weekend.